Welcome back. Let's bring you this discussion now. As the country grapples with the dying of children in specifically the country's townships due to eating suspected contaminated food, the Grow Great campaign is said to be hosting the Grow Great Stunting Summit. That's expected to be held tomorrow at the Birchwood Conference Centre in Ekurhuleni. Now, the poorest children in disadvantaged communities are dying in large numbers, not only by eating contaminated food, but also from a lack of nutritious food. For many who are not dying, the next meal is not guaranteed, and many are chronically malnourished and just have just enough to survive, but not to thrive, leading, of course, to stunted growth. Let's unpack this a bit better, bring in Grow Great Campaign Executive Director, Dr. Edzani, who joins us via our video link this morning. Doc, it's great to have you on the program, especially because of how important this issue is. Thank you very much indeed for making time. I don't want to take it for granted as a start that everybody knows what is stunting and what causes it. Perhaps we can just unpack those definitions first.
Good morning, Ayanda, and thank you so much for having me. Yes, stunting is a severe issue in South Africa, which I believe everybody should be concerned about. You know, it affects over 1.5 million children, and it costs the country over 68 billion rands annually, which is more than the entire national health budget. So stunting really is a condition which happens when a child is too short for their age because they do not have access to enough food of the right nutritional quality over a very long time. And in addition to that, also just poor psychosocial stimulation. And the underlying cause of stunting really is poverty. And many children in South Africa go to bed hungry, and many more eat whatever their parents or caregivers can afford, which is oftentimes, sadly, just pap with sugar or salt water. And that over a long period of time really causes stunting. And stunting is really not just about children being short. I think the question that we need to ask is, why are these children short? And the reason why the children are too short for their age, especially under the ages of 2 years, is because during that time, the body prioritizes brain development because 80% of the brain development happens when a child is from conception up until the child is 2 years old. So really during that time, the body, if there isn't enough nutrition, then cleverly decides, well, we don't need to be tall, so we need to sacrifice everything else so that the brain can develop as much as possible. So the bone development and growth is then compromised, and that child doesn't grow very tall. But not only is it the bone development and the height that's compromised, it's also the development of other internal organs such as the heart and the circulatory system. So those children who are stunted when they're young, when they grow up, they're likely to have hypertension because their heart and circulatory system didn't develop properly. And also the other organs like the pancreas, which controls sugar levels in the blood, also don't develop properly. So those children who stunted when they grow up, they're most likely going to have diabetes because the sugar regulation system doesn't work properly. And most importantly, even within the brain itself, the part of the brain which is for intelligence, for reasoning, analytics, understanding, memory, and learning is also compromised for the survival of the part of the brain which is responsible for survival, you know, breathing, movement, reflexes. And that's why those children who are stunted when they grow older and start school, they really struggle at school. They struggle even at ECD centers. They struggle all the way up to school, and most of them drop out from school and end up being unskilled and unemployable. So stunting is really a social injustice because we're condemning children from their very early ages, right from conception, to a future where they will never be able to reach their full potential, which I think for me is even worse than death, living a life where you will never really be able to reach your genetic potential.
Wow, that's really philosophical, and something tells me it would open up a whole can of worms, but I'll stick to just our discussion around stunting for now. And, because you've walked right into my next question, often we focus on stunting among children, but you've really outlined for us how this essentially creates dysfunctional adults. So let me ask my next question, which was going to be how adults in the room can pick up if a child is stunted versus them perhaps not developing to be taller because of something like genetic sequencing or that kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ayan. And I think it's very important to explain this part. So in a normal population, you're supposed to find only around 2.5% of people stunted. So in a room of 100 people, there should really be about 3 people who are very short. And stunting it's not just shortness, it's children who are really, really very short. And in South Africa, what you find is that in a room full of 100 people, 29 people are short, and that is not right. It means out of those 29, only 26 were only 3 were supposed to, which are genetically short, because they are genetically short people, but the other 26 probably didn't reach their full genetic potential. There's been enough studies which have been done with children from all different countries, European countries, African countries, Asian countries, where they followed them up, giving them all the same nutritional input, and really it was very clear that when children receive the same nutritional input, they all grow up to the same height, especially by the age of 2 and 5. So there isn't this thing of, well, South Africans are genetically short, we are a short nation. No, we are not generally a short nation. And we're supposed to have some people who are short, yes, but not as many people as we see. This tells us already into adulthood that something didn't happen properly, and there was not enough nutrition in childhood, and also not enough nutrition maybe also in adolescence when there's the growth spurt happening. So it is beyond genetic shortness. And when you see it in children, it's not a child who will look very thin and like they're dying from hunger. It will be a child who looks fresh, because what's happening with this child is maybe they're eating, they might be eating pap every day. They're without any other proteins, without meat, without beans, without any other thing. So they're eating enough to survive and grow and look chubby and fresh. But when you compare them, when you see that child standing next to another child of the same age, they will be very short. So that's really how parents can see. If you're looking at your child and you're seeing, and they're standing next to another 2-year-old and they look very, very short compared to the other 2 years old, it's probably not genetics. It's something that you should be concerned about. But I think even as mothers take the children to the clinics for growth monitoring, that is something that the nurses, from the time a child is born, should be able to pick up and say, this child is too short for their age. Yeah. They are lying beyond the -2 standard deviation. So these are children who are not just generally short. So we do have average height, we do have people who are a bit shorter, but these are very short children, and right, they are too short compared to their other age mates. And it's not about genetics. It's about really poor access to good nutritious food that builds them up to be able to reach their full genetic potential.
Crystal clear. Can stunting be reversed, Doc, or is there a window where you need to get this right, otherwise this becomes a permanent condition in one's life?
So the first 1,000 days, which is the time from conception up until a child reaches 2 years, is the critical window in which we need to intervene. So especially for the brain, because that's the one organ that develops almost to completion by the time a child is 2 years old, and it's almost like when you're building a house, the foundation of brain development happens in the first 2 years, and if it's compromised, very little change, no matter what you do, and you put many things, metric programs and other things, that child's brain will really struggle, and nothing, you can't grow the brain more after 2 years, except for like 20% more. What happens is that there is of catch-up growth. So if that child who was stunted, maybe at say 2 years old, gets into a preschool where there's a functional nutrition program, there is possibility of catch-up growth. But generally that catch-up growth is usually just their height. It's usually just a physical catch-up growth, because children, the research has shown us that children who are stunted at the age of 2 years, even if they catch up in terms of their height, they really struggle academically and cognitively, the same way that children who are stunted, who never recovered their height, struggle. So it's really critical that the interventions are concentrated in the first 2 years of life, but then also that there's continuation into the next phases of life. Into early learning centers, into the ages 3 to 5, when they're still in early learning centers, when they get into school, which is why the school nutrition program is so critical, because for many children this is their only meal, and there still is significant growth that happens around adolescence, in which there can be catch-up growth in terms of height, but the critical thing is the cognitive part, the brain development part, is the one that not enough catch-up growth happens, even if there is good nutrition later on in life.
What a fascinating and important issue, and something tells me, Doc, that not many people are aware of just how widespread the problem is. I suppose that makes tomorrow's summit very, very important indeed, and we wish you all the best for that. Dr. Edzani Mphaphuli, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Really do appreciate the time and the insights.
Thank you so much, Ayanda.
Is the Executive Director for Grow Great campaign. They're holding a summit around stunting that's set to take place in Boksburg from tomorrow.